Мені дуже приємно вас всіх привітати. Go back into English. It's been a long time since we've had any reference to Uku in Winnipeg. I recall the last event I attended and who sat at our table, Professor Rozumny, Professor Tandavetsky and his wife. And of course that gives you an idea if it's been at least 15 years that they haven't been with us. I've been on the board of the Ukrainian Catholic Education Foundation now for 2 years, maybe just a little longer. And Larry joined me last year, so we are the two directors that are based in Winnipeg. And it is our objective is to make information about Uku known and to create a Friends of Uku. And this is kind of our inaugural grouping of, we were selecting people who know people so that we can amplify that message and then prepare for some larger event. I think you'll find the kind of information about Uku, it's more than a university. And as I go through the presentation, I'll highlight some of the things that I think are really unique to Uku. So I will just start with that. And it is been identified as one of the 30 top 30 achievements in Ukraine since independence. Been a major investment. Very modern campus in Lviv near Strysky Park. And just to show you how I've been there in Lviv many times, and I actually had never had an opportunity to visit the university. But I think there are some people here in our audience who've been graduates of the university and have had personal contact, so I'm a newbie to that. So I know it from a distance and its work. Interesting, and we'll delve on that a little later, that it is a private university. It's supported primarily by international donors to make it affordable and accessible to the top students, the creme de la creme of students in Ukraine from all over Ukraine. It's a small university. Right now, it started with a seminary school. Right now, there are just over 2,500 students. But as the expression would go, it punches above its weight. And the impact of it is much greater than. These are undergraduate students. There are also international students that come for special programs. And there are also graduate and postgraduate degree programs. This is essentially broader than that. And this is probably the most important thing to me. It's grooming the next generation of Ukraine's leaders. Because in addition to teaching the required curriculum of whatever faculty we're talking about, from business, IT to leadership to arts, it is grooming leaders. And the difference about it is part of its mission is in fact to give this new generation of leaders a moral compass, to differentiate it from trying to break the tradition of Soviet rule corruption, and to say that there is a different way of forming leaders. So everything they're doing is breaking it to the community. And so you'll see from the other that the activities that involve the students are also providing services. And that's a really important differentiation. It's not just about the degree. So the financial model is, as I mentioned before, it's supported by international benefactors. By benefactors, not only international, there's a big fundraiser every year and it supports very major part of the fundraising budget in Kyiv. So of the people, and there are people who have become quite wealthy in Kyiv. And so they also support Uku from wherever they are. The cost of an education, of a scholarship for a student for a full year is just over 5,500 Canadian. So it's not, I think the Canadian, it would be considerably more. I haven't had a child at university for quite some time, so I don't even know what it costs now, but I understand it's substantially higher than that. So 35% of that comes from the students' fees, and 65% comes from scholarships. I talked about it punching above its weight. And a lot of that comes from leveraging, from being involved. So for example, there's associations and all sorts of agreements and working relationships with many institutions. Probably the most important of that is Notre Dame University in the US. And that's the one on the picture, but also in terms of other activities. So there is an initiative that is there for management and leadership in a military unit. Duh, that's kind of an essential key now. And for that, there are different parts of the university that are involved with that. The Leadership Center, as well as the business school, and the Come Back Alive Foundation. So private-public educational alliances to deliver these programs. And this is really key because it often is the stimulus. Similarly, the program that Olena Zelenska, the First Lady of Ukraine, has started that really focuses on mental health. And so the UKU is also involved very closely in making sure that they are educating the professionals who could in fact deliver those services. So about $12 million Canadian, and we're using Canadian dollars here. Sometimes when we deal with the university directly, we have to say, are you talking about US funds, Canadian funds? Because they're different. So the money has been going to various different aspects of humanitarian aid, and that's across the country. And from the photo gallery, which will run a little later, you'll see how the students are very much involved in that. That's an integral part of what their education program is in fact volunteering. And not only volunteering themselves, but engaging the communities from whence they came to also volunteer. And as we know, in the Canadian context, having volunteers and educating volunteers, particularly the young ones, is not an easy task. And they have a leadership program for that to strengthen the communities from where across the Ukraine. So these are the four sort of strategic priorities that the university has identified in their planning process that early fall of last year. And they're all encompassing, and I think instead of my talking about what I would say or what the university's told us, what we have is a couple of slides of what others are talking about, what they're doing in that area, which I think is probably a little more eloquent. So let's first healing the wounds of war. And here's a quote from Olena Zelenska about how she's viewing the university's work and its value. The second is promoting Ukraine on the global agenda. And there is a quote from Timothy Snyder. Now, I don't think Timothy Snyder needs a lot of introduction to this audience, but his first major sort of consumer-focused book was Bloodlands, Between Stalin and Hitler. He is a historian at Yale University and been an incredible force of communicating the context and the background and the facts that to thwart the incredible disinformation campaign that's coming out of Russia. So he is a very big supporter of UKU and does seminars and working directly with students in every which way that would be. And he has a series on YouTube that explains the history of Ukraine in a very Western context way. Which I think is extremely valuable. If you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to become. Rebuilding and renewing Ukraine. It's so important, and I thought, thank you for staying in Ukraine, which is what the message he's saying to the students and the faculty of UKU. Thank you for staying in Ukraine. And we know from the different news media how talented and how innovative they've been in all the technology and the drones and the aquatic drones and just, it's an existential fight. And the young people are in there using all their talents to help. And the last one is the moral proposal for, and it's an interesting quote, I'm using their human person of the 21st century. And that's kind of that, what I was talking about, the moral leadership, that there's more than simply technology, and there's more than simply technical expertise and promoting your own professional agenda and growth and taking care of your family. It is doing that with a moral compass. And I think that is to me, that is the strategic differentiation. Now we'll take a look at some of the programs, the actual programs, how all these four strategic directions are in fact coming into play in specific. So the first is a medical unit. It's a major initiative, a medical unit that will be not only serving people, but also providing a clinical environment in which students who are studying in these faculties, in the medical related faculties, an ability to interact and provide a service. So it's study and service kind of echoes throughout a lot of the activities. The Office of the Affairs of Veterans, this is, and their families. And this is a very, very important aspect of UKUS because, as you know, there are many psychological, physical, economic, social impacts of and issues associated with people who are serving and people who have already served. And I'm familiar with two families we have 8 families under our wing who in fact are that. One drove his family to Slovakia when the war broke out, went back to Kyiv and enlisted. A man in his 50s with 4 children who'd spent 3 years in the ATO and now has just received a leave for a few months. And he needs to get his health back because he can't carry all the equipment. But this is a lieutenant, an officer who's been in Bakhmut direction. So, you know, this is the implication to these families is huge. And psychological rehabilitation. One of the soldiers who was a platoon leader who was able to rejoin his family. He received a release from the Army last year. And for the first time, I mean, you see this blankness in his eyes, blank look, and just can't even talk about what those horrors are. So the psychological impact is not just on the servicemen, the military, but also on their families, on their children. And there's no end to it. This is extremely difficult for them. So again, setting up a service at UKU that is staffed by students is part of their educational program. So it's that study and serve connection. Physical rehabilitation. Now, there's an interesting Winnipeg connection with that because the leader of this program completed his physical therapy education at the University of Manitoba. So he's also a founder, and again, how they leverage their activity, a founder and activist in the Ukrainian Association for Physical Therapy. There's also a very strong link between the physical rehabilitation program that UKU has mounted and the major initiative, you've probably heard of it, called Unbroken, Nizlomlene. And it's a major center in Lviv that is actually working with the vets that need, and the soldiers, because some of them get refitted with the prosthesis and go back on the front. And so what UKU's role is to train the people who can work in this field. A legal clinic. And there are all kinds of issues that are arising. Imagine you've lost your land, you've lost your house, you've lost your belongings, and you still have a mortgage and various other practical things. And so again, from the School of Law, the students, as part of that, under the direction of the professors, and are delivering those services to the people in need. This is a very interesting part, because the Light of Justice Award is one that's granted annually. It started, the first granting was in 2010, and there's a Winnipeg connection here. The donor of the endowment, Natusha, Anastasia, I call her Natusha because we grew up together. Anastasia Shkilnik grew up in Winnipeg. She left when she was completing her education, went on to complete her master's and her PhD at MIT, and then in fact did research and is another Winnipeg connection because she wrote a book called, I think it was Poison Stronger Than Love, and it was about the grassy narrows and the mercury pollution, mercury poisoning. And on the New York Times list of book reviews. So Anastasia's parents were very modest. Unlike they were much older than the rest of our parents. And it was only as an adult that I really got to appreciate who her father was. He was a jurist who was in fact part of the Ukrainian delegation to the Versailles Treaty after the end of the First World War. He was the mayor of one of the cities bordering onto Poland. And here he was a very modest man running a corner grocery store. And with 4 children, Anastasia being the youngest. And she, and her mother as well, very, very modest, but from a very, a background who'd literally lost everything about their lives. And never, but their commitment was to their children. And so Natusha, before while she was struggling with a lot of health issues, she established the endowment, the Light of Justice. And the rationale behind this was to be able to recognize people who were the antithesis of the oligarchs, the antithesis of the corruption, to show that there is a different way of leading and leadership. And so this award, the first award was in 2010 to a Ukrainian dissident. And that is the actual part of the award. And I'm going to read this, Natusha's words. This award recognizes special people for their ability to ignite the light of justice in the dark crevices of the human soul and point the way to a more humane society. I think that kind of says it all. So just highlight the most recent recipients of that award. 2 women, very young, very interesting. The first, Alina Mikhailova, she became very active during the years of Maidan, and during the ATO series from 2014 was organizing humanitarian aid and supplies to people on the front. And in the course when the full invasion occurred, by this time she had actually set up a medical unit that was going straight to the front and evacuating. So it's called ULF. And so really an incredible person and a very, very justified. Her co-laureate of the ceremony that was held in December was Ekaterina Prokopenko. Slightly different story. Her husband, Prokopenko, was one of the leaders of the Avostal, the people who were the men that were defending the Mariupol to the very last time until they were encouraged to surrender. And in doing, at that time, many were taken, as you know, as prisoners. Many were, there were some of them that were victims of a fire, mysterious fire that appeared in the camp where they were being held. And Alina, actually with another of the wives, traveled to the Vatican and made a personal appeal to the Pope to help in being able to get secure releases. Her husband was released late fall, and she is working, has set up an organization to work with all the families of the defenders of the Azovstal in Mariupol, and trying to get the release of the remaining prisoners that are in war. So the two very young women, but an inspiration to others. And I think they're just an example of, there's many more like that. And those are the fallen heroes. They're either students, graduates, or professors of Ukhu that have fallen and given the ultimate sacrifice in this war. And there is a scholarship fund in their name, in their honor. Ukhu prepared these slides and they said the club, and I added Canadian club, because these are 3 Canadians who have made a significant contribution to Ukhu. The first is Jim Timirte, or Kosh Timirte as I knew him from our days in Montreal. One of the first major donations he gave was for the construction of the Sheptytsky Center, of which the library is a very major part of that center. So not only donated a significant amount of money for the construction of that building, but also an endowment that secures ongoing funding for the maintenance of programs and key programs. The other initiative that Jim has funded is 3 professorships in Ukrainian Jewish studies. And this is an interesting kind of connection, because in 2004, during the original Orange Revolution, Jim had this strategic vision of making sure that we have the connection, that we understand this historical bond and challenging relationship that's been over the years between the Ukrainian and the Jewish communities in the land that we shared. And as a result of this there's a Canadian-Jewish encounter, when in fact the Russian propaganda machine went and tried to split this as being an anti-Semitic government, the Jewish leadership came strongly in support of Ukraine and said this is not the case. And so looking ahead, the other gentleman, Ian Ignatowicz, also from Toronto. Jim was originally from Montreal and now in Toronto. Ignatowicz, he has been a generous funder to, I think it's York University, a number of Canadian universities, and always his angle is leadership. And similarly, he has been funding scholarships and particular projects in the leadership area in Ukraine. And in a few minutes, I will show you a short video clip of a student that has benefited from Ignatowicz's scholarship. So just kind of the connection between donor and recipient. And of course, Anastasia, not only did she fund the Life of Justice endowment, but she also funded a different endowment in honor of her mother. But this is not with Ukhu, it's generally but it's view-based. So again, recognizing, and we have quite a few endowments that are in recognition of parents and with specific criteria for how they want to see that money allocated, in addition to general scholarships. First and foremost, the objective today is to, as I said, to build the core of the Friends of Ukhu, people who are familiar with what Ukhu is doing and who would support it and encourage others to also be aware and support the activities. That's the first. The second is, well, there's a number of different, there's a menu, we call them, a menu of different options, from a half semester course to a full semester program. And as I mentioned before, people like Ignatovic and Jim go into lecture sponsorships and professor sponsorships. And you're looking at something that would kind of echo with some of the things that are important to you. And then some of these projects, the supporting the work that's being done in the area of rehabilitation, as well as the fund in support of the scholarship fund, the Fallen Hero Scholarship Fund. And always people have special requests, that fall into the things that are important to them, or bequests. And so just to kind of make you aware that those are options. And in fact, on the tables, I draw to your attention, we have two pieces of information. This is not working. We have a brochure that talks about the different ways you can support it. And we also have a little card that has the information about the foundation that Larry and I represent here, which is the Ukrainian Catholic Education Foundation. It's headquartered in Toronto. Very, very active Friends of Uku group in Calgary, headed again, a Winnipeg connection. Andriy Idnitsky has been heading that. Their fall event last year netted $190,000, which is really fantastic. And they've also helped, and this is another thing, they've also helped set up a relationship with St. Mary's University so that there's exchanges of students. So in some areas in your professional field, you may have links to some of these organizations that touch on what I've covered today. And we encourage you to step up and see how we can help and establish those links. So those relationships are really, really important.
Christ is risen. My name is Olha Tolmachova. I'm a political science senior at Ukrainian Catholic University. As well as this, I'm a recipient of the Ignatovic Family Fund Scholarship for Young Leaders. This scholarship not only aids the financial burden of the education, but also allowed me to pursue my passion for politics, international relations, and democracy. During my undergrad years, I served as the head of a Model Young Club at Ukrainian Catholic University. This showed me how powerful are the collaborational efforts and diplomacy. In 2022, I headed the first ever delegation from Ukraine to the National Model United Nations Conference in New York. Further, in 2023, my peers and I were recognized by the Canadian Bureau for International Education as recipients of New World Award, the promotion of a positive change on campus, and recognizing our commitment to global citizenship. Over the last 2 years, I had a chance of studying at the University of Notre Dame at the United States, as well as the European Center for the Study of War and Peace in Croatia. Currently, I'm working towards my bachelor's thesis on EU enlargement and EU negotiations, focusing specifically on Ukraine's case. Also, recently I've joined the Political Parties program at the National Democratic Institute Ukraine to work upon the promotion of inclusive and vibrant democracy in our country. As my graduation is approaching, I'm planning on attending the Masters of Public Administration at Columbia University School of International Public Affairs. I would like to extend the heartless gratitude to the founders who supported my education, allowed me to pursue all of these activities and gaining all of these incredible academic endeavors. Also, I would like to extend the enormous gratitude to all of the friends and supporters of UCU for the commitment and the support of young leaders as myself. Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge 2 graduates of UKU who are with us today. Pani Lesia Buhrin and Olesia Sloboda. Olesia was a graduate of the very first graduating class, and I've asked her to just give us a little bit of background about her experience at UKU. Olesia is now the curator at the Ukrainian Culture and Educational Center, and that's how I got to know her.
So in 1998, I was enrolled in Philosophical Theological Department of the Lviv Theological Academy, which with time evolved into the Ukrainian Catholic University. Back then, theology was not recognized as the discipline that you could study in Ukraine, even though, ironically, the theology was the basis of creation of all European universities. However, UKU made it happen. UKU went through a rigorous process of accreditation. They made the Ministry of Education change their minds. And when I was graduating, I was lucky to be graduating from an accredited institution with internationally recognized diploma. UKU was where I found like-minded people who wanted to be champions of social transformation and grow as professionals in a corruption-free environment. UKU is an educational institution where students could only rely on their talent and hard work to achieve their academic excellence. At that time, in the 1990s, that was unheard of in Ukraine. Corruption-free educational system did not exist. And UKU was the light, the beacon of light and the leader in change of the post-Soviet educational system in Ukraine. Over the years, UKU has become a first-class university, offering Ukrainian students various academic opportunities in an environment deeply rooted in strong ethical values. The classical education I received at UKU was a solid basis for my future academic pursuits. But more than that, UKU showed us, the students, how to create community based on respect, mutual values, and spirituality. I'm honored to be among the first students who graduated from UKU in 2003, which is 20 years ago. UKU was a community where we studied, where we prayed, and where we had fun. And one day I will never forget. And that day, Bishop Boris Gudziak, who at that time was rector at UKU, he was giving us a lecture about spirituality, and suddenly he decided that he wanted to organize a community developing exercise. So he asked us to go outside. And that was a beautiful sunny winter day. And he suggested that we play a snowball fight. So we were playing with snowballs with him for over an hour. And then all of other students from other classes, professors, personnel joined us. And that experience that we received during that unusual, like team building exercise, gave us this deeper sense of belonging and kind of removed for a second this hierarchy within the institution, and we felt like we are equal in this community when we are trying to achieve excellence both from our, from our different perspectives and positions. So that was a fantastic experience, and not many alumni can brag about playing a snowball fight with their rectors. But we were different, from other students. UKU was different from other educational institutions in Ukraine. And the friendship bonds and the connections that we created at UKU are lifelong. And every UKU alumni can rely on another UKU alumni in a time of need. And the world in Ukraine needs institutions like UKU. And so please continue supporting it. Thank you.
Okay. Пані Лесі, ви хочете, може, пару слів додати до цього з вашої перспективи?
Я трошки поправлю, що я була одна з перших.
Так.
Тобто ми починали ще в дуже маленькому приміщенні, в садочок,
Так.
і воно починалося все дуже так. Ну, ніхто не знав, як воно буде. І ми, ті перші студенти, теж не знали, як воно буде. Але дійсно то була можливість попробувати щось нове. То була теж можливість бути в закладі церковному, бо теж нічого ще такого не було в той час. Тому я будучи теж вже я мала можливість вчитися в звичайному університеті, але все-таки в той час я вибрала католицький той університет, хоча то була Львівська богословська академія на той час. І я ніколи не пожаліла за той вибір, тому думаю, що теж більшість тих, які там вчилися, зможуть щось зробити і допомогти Україні, допомогти церкві. Тому, якщо ми тут разом теж зібралися, щоб допомогти Україні і нашій церкві, тому дякую, будемо сподіватися.
Дуже дякую. Я думаю, when we organized the program here, it's kind of self-contained, so it's easy to hold an event in your parish, in any other organization. There's like kit that's ready to go, good to go, as a way of making this information more available. And thank you. Дуже дякую. Дуже дякую.
You know, I believe that a lot of things that were happening and are happening in Ukraine is part of what we call in theological language cooperation between God's grace and humans' efforts. And we can see how God's providence shows its power in Catholic University, and I would like to have that short prayer, this prayer of thanksgiving for that God's gift of university. It started a long time ago, and I believe we have a lot of supporters in heaven, like Metropolitan Sheptetsky and Patriarch Slipei, and that prayer will be a prayer of thanksgiving for those young people that came from United States and Canada, because among first professors were immigrants or children of immigrants from United States and Canada. And also let us thank for those students, graduates, for those who are building Ukraine, who are defending Ukraine now. Let us also say a quiet prayer for those who give their life for Ukraine. And may our gathering be small impact, small gift for the university. If we feel in our heart that we want to be part of that great God's mystery, let us be, and let us ask God's grace to be able to do so in the way that we feel is the best. В ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. В ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Lord Jesus, thank you for all what you did for Ukraine, Ukrainian Catholic University. And may your name and your glory be shown as a future act of this university and of graduates, professors, and support. Amen.